Drop it. All right, welcome to Power Panel. Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola, Mike Figueroa from the Humanist Report. Okay, look at this. Mike, welcome to the program, brother.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, as you can tell, I'm excited to have you.
Too excited.
I know. I need some of whatever you took before the show, Cenk. I need that energy.
So when me, John, and Francisco do the show, I say it's the all-Mediterranean version of TYT. But boy, this is as close to the all-Italian version as you can get. Two Italians and a Turk.
I'm Portuguese, actually.
Oh, is that right? No, forget it.
Yeah.
You're out. You're out. Okay, where's Francesca?
I ruined. I should have not said anything.
No, I assume based on your name, but yeah, Francesca, by the way, is here. She'll be on in the second hour. But before we move on, Mike, tell us the actual way to pronounce it, like the old school homeland way of pronouncing your last name.
Man, my grandma's gonna be upset because I'm not gonna do it as well as she can. But it's Figueiredo, but Figueiredo is the main variation, but I accept like 5 to 6 other variations of it. It's relatively difficult, but I think that if people can say Mike from Humanist Report, I will grant that. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
See what Mike's doing there? He's throwing in the good branding. I mean, because you got to go watch the Humanist Report. Is it part of the TYT network? I guess.
I'm priming people to say my show's name.
Exactly.
And it's really like a marketing exercise that, you know, that's a benefit if you have a terrible name that's hard to pronounce. So, yeah.
Don't I know, brother? My middle name is Kadir. I'm named after my grandfather, Abdul Kadir. But I'm thinking of changing it to TYT.
Hey,
his middle name.
That would work.
TYT.
I still remember when you interviewed Joe Manchin and he was calling you Sink the entire time, and he was trying to be personal by using your first name, and it's just like Sink. And it was so relatable to me.
Yeah, don't I know, brother? All right, look, we got a big show ahead. I'm in a great mood, but usually the first story changes that real quick, and it probably will this time as well. But we do have tons of fun stories for you guys today, including Marjorie Taylor Greene yelling at a mailbox. You will love it. It's hilarious. She still has not accepted my offer of a debate, so I guess this is day 2 of her being a coward. Just using her ideology right back at her. But anyway, we've got more of that later. But John, take it away.
Exactly. It was actually more understandable than the media's making it out to. She thinks all the mail-in votes come from there. So you can understand her anger.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But anyway, jokes aside, you want to get started with some really dark news?
Yes, I do, Johnny.
We've got that for you. Okay. I want to give you an updated idea of what's going on in Israel and Palestine. We've got numbers for you, but bear in mind that every time we go over these numbers, God only knows what might have happened since we found them. But as of when we did this research, Palestinian officials had said that 120 people have been killed, 900 wounded, and additionally, coming from sources within the Israeli military, 8 Israelis, including 1 soldier, had been killed. Now, if you've been following this in the time between yesterday's episode of The Young Turks and today's, you had a massive aerial bombardment last night, eventually followed by a ground invasion of both ground troops and tanks. At one point, Israel had been deploying as many as 160 aircraft simultaneously, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying that this operation will continue as long as it takes to restore peace and security to the state of Israel, or allow me to form a functioning government. One of those two things. Now, all that being true, those numbers, I want you to take a look at what Joe Biden had to say about the situation. Do we not? Unfortunately. Okay, well, Joe Biden was being asked about this at a press conference, and he said that from his point of view, the response had not been in any way disproportionate. That it was just understandable. They were talking with the Israeli government. And of course, he then sort of turned to, well, and not just Israel. We're also talking to Palestinians. But it was definitely an afterthought. And the concept that what we've seen, both in terms of the deployment of military hardware, the means, as well as the results, 120 people killed on the Palestinian side, 8 Israelis killed. That is basically what we see every time this cycle of violence continues. The president of the United States, the lead Democrat, says that's not disproportionate in any way. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so first of all, this is the same Joe Biden that's always been the same way. When Bush slightly critiqued Israel in his term, Biden chastised him publicly, saying, "How dare you criticize Israel publicly? If you have any kind of critique for Israel, God forbid, you should whisper that into their ear, and because otherwise that's going to hurt our joint propaganda to make sure that everybody think Palestinians are evil and the Israelis government is godlike and never makes any mistakes." So this is classic Biden. He's a total hawk and very conservative right winger in foreign policy. That's just reality. The mainstream media can cry about it, but we got receipts. I can show you video after video, quote after quote, and so this is not at all surprising. But honestly, it's not just Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a classic politician. He just puts his finger to the wind. That's why he's going slightly left now, because the winds are going slightly left now. Back in the day when things were right wing, he was the most right wing Democrat you could find. So it's really Washington. And in Washington, and Ryan Grimm at The Intercept, as usual, had a brilliant piece about this. Even as late as 2014, he found a perfect instance of a Democrat in New York talking about just in the middle of that last conflict, just saying love Palestine. That's it, that inoffensive. And all hell rained down on her, and they tried to kick her out of the Democratic Party for just saying, hey, it's okay to love Palestine. 2014 was only 7 years ago. And so I lived through that my whole life, and I talked about it on yesterday's show. No critique of Israel in any way, shape, or form, no matter if it was left-wing government, moderate government, right-wing government, was ever allowed. And you would try, and they would try to drive you from the public square. Who's they? The classic politicians, both corporate Republicans and Democrats, the mainstream media, etc. And it was just conventional wisdom that you're not even allowed to show any degree of support for Palestine. In fact, as late as 2016, when Bernie Sanders' team insisted, after they lost the primary, but they were doing a joint task force on the Democratic platform, just saying we should be in favor of a two-state solution and just mentioning Palestinians. Not any big demands on behalf of Palestinians, just mentioning they're also human, we should also take them into account and work towards a two-state solution. No, the mainstream media and mainstream Democrats sent in people, honestly, it's uncomfortable, but it's true, people like Bakari Sellers, to go and kill that proposal on behalf of the Israeli lobby. That's reality. You could look into it. You can confirm what I'm saying is a fact. You might be made uncomfortable by that fact, but my point is I think that Bakari Sellers and the others that's up to them on whether they feel comfortable and they say, hey, listen, I represent the Israeli lobby and I don't think Palestinians should be represented. You should make that point not in the darkness of a room when they're discussing a platform where nobody can see them, but on television. So now, finally, we have progressives who are willing to stand up in Congress and say, I disagree. I think Palestinians are in fact human and should have human rights. And those are the Just Democrats that John is going to get to in a minute. But it is, understand how historic it is. 25 years of covering this, and this is the first time that anyone in power is ever saying that Palestinians have rights and should be respected as human beings, and we should also care about their lives. It's never happened in Washington before. It's a giant breakthrough. We'll give you the details of that in a second, but I want to let Mike jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to that note, back in 2014, when Israel was doing their incursion into Gaza, I remember trying to scour the internet to just hear any Democrat speak with some level of clarity. And like the best that we saw was that example that you brought up in that Ryan Grimm article where Jessica Ramos, she just tweeted out Palestine and a heart, that's it. And so even Bernie Sanders back then, I remember watching a live stream of a town hall that he did. And his response was terrible. I was genuinely shocked. Like my mouth was to the floor watching this because Bernie Sanders sounded a lot like Joe Biden today, to keep it real. And I love Bernie Sanders. He's moved a lot on this issue, but it really puts things into perspective. In 2014, Bernie Sanders was even terrible. And now we have not just one, but multiple members of Congress actually speaking with clarity, not only calling it an apartheid state, but you have Ilhan Omar, which I'm sure we'll get to in a moment here, actually condemning Benjamin Netanyahu as a far-right ethno-nationalist. To me, this is so significant. Like it honestly feels like a paradigm shift. And I didn't ever expect this to happen. Like I thought that forever, the best that we'd get is silence from Democrats. But the tide is turning. And I think that what the squad is doing really it proves that, and it's heartening to see.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make one quick note. I've been criticizing Bernie a lot lately because he's not using his leverage on economic issues. And Mike is definitely right about his past stance on Israel. But since 2016 on, 2015 on, he's been a warrior for justice on this issue. And again, I remember in 2016, first presidential debate I ever saw in my life, actually probably at any level in America, where someone said that they cared about Palestinians' economic well-being. That was Bernie Sanders. And no one has been targeted more by fake Democratic groups that are actually just splinter groups of AIPAC more than Bernie Sanders has, even more than Ilhan Omar. Okay, so Bernie's been excellent on this issue today.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the Just Democrats.
Yeah, and I'll get to that in one second. I do want to say, I think that the paradigm shift that Mike is talking about is there, and I don't even think it's necessarily constrained just to this issue. I think that over the past few years, you've seen a lot of congressional Democrats willing to speak with something much closer to sort of a clear moral vision on conflicts like in Yemen, of the US relationship with Saudi Arabia, that I can't imagine 10 or 15 years ago being very popular. The issue is that regardless of which of these situations we're talking about, it is still very well walled off from the leadership of either party. And in Yemen, you had some Republicans willing to work with people like Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna. But with the Democrats, we have these great individuals we're gonna talk about in the Just Democrats. But the statements that have been put out on the current situation in Israel by people like Biden or Pelosi or McConnell, you could just throw them all in a hat and pull them out for any one of them. They're basically the same thing. In any event though, as we said, there are people who are doing good work in this area. So we wanna start off with Representative Rashida Tlaib.
To read the statements from President Biden, Secretary Blinken, General Austin, and leaders of both parties, you'd hardly know Palestinians existed at all. There has been no recognition of the attack on Palestinian families being ripped from their homes in East Jerusalem right now, or home demolitions. No mention of children being detained or murdered. No recognition of a sustained campaign of harassment and terror by Israeli police against worshipers, kneeling down and praying and celebrating their holiest days in one of their holiest places. No mention of Al-Aqsa. There has been absolutely no recognition of Palestinian humanity. If our own State Department can't even bring itself to acknowledge the killing of Palestinian children is wrong, well, I will say it for the millions of Americans who stand with me against the killing of innocent children, no matter their ethnicity or faith. I weep for all the lives lost under the unbearable status quo, every single one, no matter their faith, their background. How many of my colleagues are willing to say the same, to stand for Palestinian human rights as they do for Israelis?
Turns out very, very few. And where that stand would intersect with any sort of significant change in US policy, like for instance, putting any contingencies whatsoever on the military aid provided to the Israeli government, it's 19, I think, right now that are willing to do that. But I love so many of the points that she made. And she did something that very few do, which is talk about what actually kicked off this violence that we're seeing. Grenades going off in Al-Aqsa, completely unacceptable. And that should be being played on repeat, but it's not. You're just seeing videos of missiles from Iron Dome shooting down rockets. And you'll see that over and over and over and over again until everyone will forget what actually started this. All of our leaders have already pretended that they've forgotten. She's totally right. Like, we have to remember what actually began this, and that's already basically been wiped away.
Yeah, so there's not much to add to what she said other than the fact that, oh my God, she said it in Congress. Like, first of all, you could barely say it in the media. I can't get into all the details, but when I said it on air, I would get yelled at by people in power, and they would say that what I was saying was unacceptable, that you're not allowed to stand up for Palestinians. You're not ever allowed to question Israel. It was, there's no law on it. It was conventional wisdom. And if you did it too many times, you were gonna get removed, right? Because in the bad old days, there were gatekeepers and you served at their pleasure, right? And so, and guys, don't misinterpret it as anything other than this foreign policy issue. The gatekeepers were not Jewish. The bosses were generally Irish. Don't get me wrong. You see what I'm saying? It was just conventional wisdom, and it was unbreakable. And she just broke it. And what are you going to say to her? No, you shouldn't represent Palestinians, even though you're a Palestinian American. No, you shouldn't get us to ask whether they're also human and have rights. You can't say that to her. Well, you could, but they tried. That's why that when we fought back, when they called Ilhan Omar anti-Semitic and they tried that resolution on her, that was actually the beginning of the end of that monopoly and breaking that monopoly. So they thought that she would go quietly into the night. I gotta tell you guys, look, I'm proud of it and you should be proud of it. We formed the Justice Democrats, and yes, there's been bumps in the road, etc., right? But if those four weren't all Justice Democrats, the so-called squad, right? AOC, Tlaib, Omar, and Ayanna Pressley, they wouldn't have necessarily stuck together like they did. They just would have been random Congress people who might not have even ever met before they got into Congress. But instead they met, they were a group, they were Justice Democrats. And so when they went after Ilhan Omar, Rashida, AOC, Ayanna stepped in. And it made a big difference. And then the second time they went after Ilhan Omar unjustly, we won, they lost. And then the tide turned, and here is a result of the tide. By the way, these speeches, John, I don't know how many more you got, but Ayanna Pressley's was fantastic. And I'll tell you, be honest about it. Ayanna Pressley was much more right-wing on this issue before. But now she's part of Justice Democrats. Now I think she's given room to run, and she's talking about apartheid. If you called Israel an apartheid state on air, on cable news, just a couple of years ago, you would have been taken off the air for sure. And anybody that denies it is totally not living in reality.
Yeah. Mike, thoughts?
You couldn't even say occupation on air without issuing some sort of a correction. That was taboo as well. And the beauty of their speeches is that everything that they're saying, like, they're not mincing words. They're unequivocally condemning Israel. And that matters. Even the folks who disagree with what's happening and aren't peddling the whole, oh, well, Israel has the right to defend itself line. They may not necessarily want to speak up because they know that the Israel lobby is going to bankroll their opponent's campaign come election time. But that's already happening to Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, so they have nothing to lose at this point. And that's why they're speaking with so much clarity. They don't care because everything that could have been done against them has already been done. So now, the shackles have been released and they're just speaking on this issue as it is. And what is happening is apartheid. And to have any member of Congress say the words apartheid truly is a game changer.
100%.
Exactly.
And I just want to say one last thing about that, or two quick things. One is they came, other than Bernie Sanders, they came hardest at Ilhan Omar. And they spent a tremendous amount of money trying to defeat her in Democratic primary this time around, in 2020. And I told you guys they have 0% chance of beating her. They're like, oh no, we're gonna beat it. No, because it's all on name recognition, right? And so she steamrolled her opponents that had much greater financing than her. So now, I told you they're paper tigers. They're paper tigers. Everybody was afraid of absolutely nothing, right? And so now Ilhan Omar showed that. By the way, you know who they're coming after next? Nina Turner.
Yeah.
So NinaTurner.com/hello. We cannot have her lose, especially at the hands of people who want to, don't want even-handedness, don't want a two-state solution, don't want fairness for Palestinians, and then are going to bankroll Nina Turner's opponent to the tune of millions of dollars? Yeah. Oh, hell no. NinaTurner.com/hello. Go help her right now. She's in the middle of a campaign right now. And she would be, if you like these speeches, and you should, wait till you get a load of Nina.
Yeah, I'm personally worried. I think Michelle Caruso Cabrera, a couple more $1 million. I think she's gonna take down AOC next time. What a waste of money. But that said, can we actually skip, let's queue up Ayanna Pressley because it kills me that we can't go to all of these. There was a lot of great, isn't that amazing? We have a problem of too many good speeches being given. But anyway, here is Representative Pressley.
Palestinians are being told the same thing as black folks in America. There is no acceptable form of resistance. We are bearing witness to egregious human rights violations. The pain, trauma, and terror that Palestinians are facing is not just the result of this week's escalation, but the consequence of years of military occupation. We cannot stand idly and complicitly by and allow the occupation and oppression of the Palestinian people to continue. We cannot remain silent when our government sends $3.8 billion of military aid to Israel that is used to demolish Palestinian homes, imprison Palestinian children, and displace Palestinian families. A budget is a reflection of our values. I'm committed to ensuring that our government does not fund state violence in any form, anywhere. Many say that conditioning aid is not a phrase that I should utter here, but let me be clear. No matter the context, American government dollars always come with conditions. The question at hand is, should our taxpayer dollars create conditions for justice, healing, and repair? Or should those dollars create conditions for oppression and apartheid? Now, while I hold space for the storied history and unique lived experiences on the ground globally, there is a through line here. And whether we are talking about the militarization of our communities or weapons of war, the question is the same. If our budgets are a statement of our values, what do we value?
That was just about the best I've heard from her, I think, actually.
Literally the best speech she's ever given.
Yeah, and
that I've seen.
I loved the point that she drew it back to the experience in the US. There's no way that you're actually allowed to speak up for yourself, to fight for any sort of change. And actually, I want to work this into two graphics that we have, because right now there's violence, and that's obviously unacceptable. Before, there wasn't. In fact, there was a good period where there was nothing like what we're seeing right now. So before the current crisis, Gazans already lived in what one UN human rights official called a toxic slum, a jagged strip of land blockaded indefinitely by Israel and Egypt, whose roughly 2 million residents endured daily power outages of up to 16 hours and running water that worked only every other day. Well, now, after the massive aerial bombardment campaign, they're down to about 5 hours of electricity per day and half their usual water supply. So obviously, the situation right now is insane. It's unthinkable. It was insane and unthinkable before. So what are they supposed to do? And for how many years are they supposed to do it? Not just like to be able to totally control their own, like literally be able to live with electricity and water as we would expect for any human living in any portion of the world. I have no idea. I'm sure they're confused too, because it doesn't seem like there's anything they can do, peace or conflict, organization or chaos, that will actually result in any bettering of their lives.
Yeah, so guys, I'm telling you, man, if you ever gave $1 or an hour to a Justice Democrat, an hour of your time, you did it. At least on this really important issue, this moral issue, you made a giant difference. This is unprecedented. I just can't impress that enough on you. First of all, when she says, what form of resistance is acceptable? It's such a great question. I remember when just a couple of years ago when the Palestinians tried to go to the United Nations and have Palestine declared a state, just like Israel did, identical to Israel. And I said, well, if you don't allow this, what do you allow? They're going diplomatic, peaceful, nonviolent. And they said, nope, you can't protest Israel. You can't go to the United Nations. You obviously can't do violence. You can't do anything. You just have to sit there and never have freedom and know that you're inferior to us. And when I said things like that, I was considered a monster. Why do you think we're outcasts? Because we say things like that are true and that Washington despises. It was not allowed to be said. It was not allowed to be said, but she just said it in the House. What are you gonna do now? And they all said it together. Cori Bush, AOC, Ilhan Omar. We don't have time to show you all their videos, but go watch them. They're amazing. Thank you. Even Mark Pocan and some others that have kind of been quiet on everything are now speaking up on this issue. And McCollum from Minnesota has been a giant on this issue. So now, look, one final thing for me. She touched the third rail there and she didn't die politically. The third rail is conditioning aid to Israel. Like maybe you could have like I don't hate Palestinians. Maybe you could have done that like 3 years ago, but that was the outer limit. Now she's saying, yeah, I'm not necessarily gonna give you the $3.8 billion we give you. Maybe I'm gonna vote no. Yeah. It depends. Are you killing people with it? Or are you doing something good with it? Are you protecting your citizens? It depends, right? And that was heresy until about 24 hours ago.
Super fast. I don't know if you remember back during the Republican primary in 2016, Rand Paul, who was running obviously as what passes for libertarian, was like, no aid anywhere. And they were all like, yeah. And he was like, including to Israel. And they were like, boo. And he was like, okay, Israel can have it. Like he totally backed up instantly. It was the fastest turnaround I've ever seen from Rand Paul. I do remember
we covered on this show. He's such a coward. You see Rand Paul? That's how you do it. Learn from those women, okay? And figure out how to grow a set. Mike.
Yeah, I wanted to add about Mark Pocan's comment. It was really impressive to see him. This is the former co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and he said something really magnificent that I didn't expect a progressive leader in Congress to say, because they have been relatively silent on some issues. He said that to remain silent during this time is to side with the oppressor. That's a shot at all other Democrats to speak up. Now is the time where we're going to look back in history and see who actually was on the side of the oppressor and who was on the side of human rights. And for him to say that, honestly, like, you usually don't see Democrats fight, especially when they're fighting other Democrats. But to me, that was incredible. And honestly, Mark Pocan deserves a lot of credit for that, because that did take bravery.
Wow. Yeah, he's the one guy that's sometimes progressives in Washington say, oh, Mark Pocan does stuff. I've never seen him do anything, but that was wonderful. And
right.
Look, and you're right, Mike. That's another line that they never cross, which is criticizing fellow Democrats. Totally. Which, to give credit to the Republicans, they cross all the time, right? They have actual debates. They might be crazy, but they're real debates within the party. Before, in the Democratic Party, intra-party debates were unacceptable, and you were a monster if you did it. Yeah. Well, they just did it, right? So maybe that could also spill over into other issues like $15 minimum wage, where you might be able to say, hey, fellow Democrats, I think you might be lying. You don't actually want it, because you say you want it, then you vote no. That gives me a pretty good indication that you don't want it. Look, cross your fingers, one step at a time, but this is a monumentally important issue on human rights. And there's Mark Pocan actually being a leader, and there's all those other wonderful legislators fighting for justice like we've never seen before. Yeah. So for anyone who helped make that happen, thank you.
Well, not surprisingly, that took up a good portion of the hour. We do have to take our first break, though. There's a lot of other news to get to, and we'll do that after this.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
First, go to our member section as always, tyt.com/join to become a member and get your comments read like this and be part of the show. Someone who likes Bernie Sanders wrote in, got to rename the show The Humanist Report with Mike from The Humanist Report. Always thinking, always thinking. I like it. And he grabs attention. Now I go to YouTube Super Chat. Forrest Dudley writes in, amazing to see Mike. Humanist Report was the first progressive show I ever started watching when I began my political awakening during the start of the 2020 primary. Never knew you were part of the TYT network. There needs to be a list. That's right, we're gonna make a list and check it twice, okay? But seriously, that's actually a good point. And at some point, there's a lot to work on. We put together that list and put it on our website. Obviously, go to tyt.com. You'll already see a lot of our programming, etc. But Mike's been part of the network for a long time. I'm super proud to have him. And thank you, Forrest, for writing that in. New members on YouTube, Mick Greenwood, Ashrab Jalajel, and Gregor McNee. So are you guys American heroes for helping to support getting the truth out there and fighting for positive change? Yes, yes you are. So thank you for joining, we appreciate it, makes this show possible. YT Prenude writes in on YouTube Super Chat, on Palestine, Jewish voices like Sanders are vital. And I've said this 1,000 times on the show, if you've been watching the whole 19 years. The strongest voices up until now fighting against the Israeli oppression and occupation have almost all been Jewish voices in America. And by the way, there's partly a reason for that. If you're not Jewish, again, until about 2 years ago, you would automatically be labeled an anti-Semite. That's just reality. You just smear like every time. And just as a matter of routine.
Even Bernie does a little bit.
Yeah, oh no, and then in fact, I predicted last election before it started, since Bernie's great on the issue of Israel and Palestine, they'll call him an anti-Semite. And they did, and we showed it to you on the show. Bernie Sanders is Jewish, they called him an anti-Semite because that's the only thing they got in their bag. And that's why I say when you're fighting paper tigers, you just gotta get past that first trick. They always have one trick. Oh, you're an anti-Semite. Oh, I'm gonna spend $2 million against you. Okay, you get past those two tricks, you're done. And you show, oh, what happened? What happened? You spent it, you called me an anti-Semite. Ilhan Omar is a perfect example. And we beat you because you were wrong and you were lying. So, but look, I can name a huge list for you. Adam Green, etc. Matt Stoller, on and on and on of wonderful folks who've led that fight and have been principled and awesome progressives. All right, I'm out of time, but you guys had so many great comments, but I'll read them in the next break. So we'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Mike with you guys. John, take it away.
Let's do it. The GOP can boot Liz Cheney out of leadership, but they can't necessarily stop her from talking about the last election and her perceptions of what happened and what didn't happen. In fact, doing the first might have made the second actually more likely because she was just on Fox News, and here's a conversation that she had with Bret Baier.
When you look at the challenge that the former president is presenting right now, still today, claiming that the election was stolen, claiming that our electoral process does not accurately reflect the will of the people, no remorse or regret for January 6th, continuing to use the language that we know inspired violence in the past. I continue to say it though, Bret. But Bret, I continue to say it because
in principle. I get
it. But it's because
but for the people of Wyoming who are electing a congressperson to fight for them and to fight against the Biden agenda, why wouldn't they say, is this the person that's going to get it done? That's what your colleagues are asking.
I'm going to answer the question. We all have an obligation, and I would say Fox News especially Fox News, has a particular obligation to make sure people know the election wasn't stolen. Fox News, Bret, I'm going to answer your question. Fox News needs to make sure that the American people,
Fox News, you have to know that this show has said that
the American people, Bret, you're doing the interview, I'm answering the questions. We need to make sure that the American people recognize and understand that the election wasn't stolen, that we shouldn't perpetuate the big lie, and that there's real danger.
They seem to really like each other. Yeah, you know that Bret Baier is totally comfortable with acknowledging that the election was legitimate when he says, we've said that, come on. Like, he definitely wants to have this be a thing that his show is known for, acknowledging legitimacy. And he also threw out, why would the people of Wyoming want you? You're supposed to be fighting against Biden, so why are you acknowledging that the election wasn't stolen? So that's what they would say. That's what he threw out. When he kept asking the question, he seems to want to make that be what Liz Cheney is about. A question of, can you serve as a congresswoman? Can you deliver for your constituents? Can you oppose Biden if you don't tell the lie that the election was stolen? None of that makes any sense to me, but that's one of their straight news guys saying it.
Yeah, and by the way, if you compare the voting record of Liz Cheney to Elise Stefanik, who replaced her, Cheney was more conservative than by about 20 points, a little bit over 20 points if I remember right. And by the way, to Liz Cheney's discredit, she also voted with Donald Trump far more than Stefanik did. She voted with Trump 92% of the time. So like this big, bold, anti-Trump person opposed him 8% of the time. Now, at the same time, this election is so important and protecting our democracy is so important. I do appreciate what she's saying on this issue, even though I disagree with her on everything else. Now, but the reason she's emphasizing Fox here is a poll just came out saying 86% of Fox viewers think the election was stolen. Joe Biden stole the election, did like fraud, cheated, fixed the voting. Like in all those different states, you understand what kind of a giant conspiracy that would take? And that actually happened in the real world, and Donald Trump actually won, but was robbed. That's what 86% of Fox viewers believe. Now, how do you think they came to that belief? Because of what Liz Cheney's saying, because Fox says it all the time. They say it with undertones, overtones, they flat out say it, they have guests say it over and over and over again, and then 2 or 3 times Chris Wallace and Bret Baier say, by the way, the election wasn't stolen, please don't sue us, okay?
Please keep watching.
Yeah, no, your overwhelming message you send through Tucker Carlson and everyone else that it was stolen. And you guys are unbelievable liars and you brainwashed tens of millions of Americans into believing your goddamn lie. So I can't believe I'm on the same side as Liz Cheney, but only on this one issue. All right, Mike.
Yeah, I've got to say, a broken clock is right twice a day. And Liz Cheney, thankfully, is...
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Objectively correct on this issue. Having said that, though, it does worry me, and I'm going to get a little bit more cynical here, that Democrats like Nancy Pelosi applaud her for her courageousness, because it's not like Liz Cheney is doing this because she genuinely cares about democracy. If she cared about democracy, she would have supported H.R. 1, the For the People Act. It passed the House, and Liz Cheney voted nay on the For the People Act. So if she actually cared about the legislative push around the country, using the big lie that she's denouncing now, she would have supported that piece of legislation. And so I read a really phenomenal piece in The Intercept from Ryan Grimm, where he breaks down how every single thing that Liz Cheney does is a cynical ploy to advance her own career. So I could only speculate. I don't know what she's doing here. Maybe she's trying to position herself as like the anti-Trump Republican in 2024, 2028. I'm not sure. But what I do know is that one thing that I have to point out is she wasn't concerned about another big lie that Fox News pushed a few years ago. Her father's big lie about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction. So even though like it's good that Liz Cheney is telling the truth about the election, I just can't not hate her. She's so insufferable because she's such a liar herself, and everything just seems so disingenuous and opportunistic. So that might be overly cynical, but I'm speaking my truth here.
I like you're speaking your truth. Mike, that's not at all overly cynical. That's 100% right. Factually,
I hate her guts, Cenk.
I don't know, guys. There is a consistency, though. Her father only told that lie to export democracy over to Iraq.
Oh, yeah.
After all.
That is true. That is the one thing I missed.
Yeah,
that is true.
So look, all the facts that Mike gave about Liz Cheney's record are factually indisputable. The fact that he hates her guts is also factually indisputable. It's his actual opinion. But seriously, guys, one last thing. Look, I don't care too much how politicians, what they actually think or what their real motivations are, as long as they're voting or doing the right things. So I won't look a gift horse too much in the mouth here, and I'm glad, because it matters that there's a Republican out there saying Trump's a liar, Trump's a liar, all these Republicans are liars, it's not true. The election wasn't stolen. From a marketing, branding, media perspective, that makes a big difference. Okay, having said that, Mike, I thought the same exact thing this morning. As I was reading this, I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is actually really smart on Liz Cheney's part. Because she's establishing herself, her brand, as the anti-Trump person. Like now, nobody remembers Jeff Flake or anyone else, or Classy Ben Sassy, who's gone back into a cave and hiding, etc. The one person everybody remembers as that didn't support Donald Trump, the Republican Party, is Liz Cheney. So she just separated herself from everyone else. I'm not saying that position wins, but there needs to be, but it's a smart play as a matter of percentages. If you're one person out of all those Congress people to stand out, to go this specific route.
Maybe. I mean, definitely politicians are arrogant and ambitious. I can't imagine that she looks out there or has any polling that tells her that she's going to break through in 2024, 2028.
Oh, she's a Cheney. Of course she's looking for power. Of course.
I just don't know where she's supposed to find it.
No, but she was
with the current Republican Party.
Third in charge of the Republicans in the House, right? She was the number 3 Republican in the House. Does Cheney have larger ambitions? Of course. Yeah,
but Schumer's the majority leader. He's not going to be president ever. Like there are limits.
Cheney is much younger. No, I get. Look,
maybe
no. They'd almost have to be stupid not to think about her positioning and her branding and how she's going to be considered the #1 anti-Trump Republican in the country. And if Trump falls out of favor, for example, if he was prosecuted,
that would increase his favor.
Wish upon a dream, etc. Look, I don't know how he would fall out of favor. It seems nearly impossible. I'm not saying that strategy would win, but if you're looking to give yourself the best odds. This is how you would do it. So, but if she's doing it for politics, I don't really care. So have at it, Hoss.
Yeah, right? I like the truth.
Yeah.
Now, that said, why don't we turn to another topic, very different news. Oh, okay. Well, unfortunately, we're going to. But first, a break. And then we'll come back. We'll give you the latest on Matt Gaetz. Some developments coming early next week that he's not going to like. We'll have that after this.
During the break, look, I want to do guys programming announcements for you guys, but I can't get past all the love for Mike. Cassie Kraft on YouTube Super Chat. Love the Humanist Report. Glad to see Mike on the power panel. Bless your heart.
Thank you so much.
Tim Koger writes in, Mike, AKA the Humanist Report on power panel. Love it. What's next? The Rational National?
Nice.
Is independent media like TYT and them great? I guess. Tim, you are correct to guess
Hell
that.
yeah. Okay.
Yes, and the Rational National is great too. Look, guys, it's almost like we've got a progressive network and it kind of kicks ass and dominates online. So one quick side story it's a perfect lead into the next announcement I'm going to tell you guys. So there's a recent article in mainstream media, and they're talking about like, oh, this right-wing channel. They only care about right-wing channels on YouTube, the mainstream press. They almost never cover left-wing channels, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, by the way, Young Turks larger than all of them combined. Okay, anyway, we move on. Okay, by the way, they didn't even say it. They just showed it in a chart. Yeah. They're like, look at how important the right-wing media is. They're number 17. Oh, Young Turks number 3. Anyway, don't talk about them. Number 17 for the win. Okay. Anyways,
we're number 17.
By the way, we're number 3 on Facebook in all of America in news. So beneath us is CNN, Fox News, ABC News, etc. Okay, so not a big deal that I just mentioned that. All right, speaking of not a big deal, guess who just won another streaming?
Who?
Who could it be? Who could it be?
Who?
I guess it was us. I guess it was you guys. In fact, literally, we just won audience honor for best live event coverage for 2020 election. So right wing, go home and cry about that. Oh, you get triggered. You get triggered.
In a meltdown.
Okay. Best live coverage of the 2020 election, all of online. Young Turks, too strong. And of course it was because of you guys, because you voted for it. Yeah. Well, I love that. Everyone, like almost every time the industry or whatever is like, oh, this like really super serious mainstream media outlet did something slightly interesting. We're gonna give it to them. Well, let's ask the audience. The audience is like, Young Turks, DYT. Right. So I think that's their 12th streaming and Shorty and Webby combined. Wow. I lost track. Thanks to you guys. All right. Oh my God, I only have 30 seconds left. Common Rooms tonight. A huge announcement. Whoa, sick. Okay, you can't miss it. It's 9 p.m. Eastern tonight. There's a big announcement. Now I can't wait to see it. Sunday stream is at 6 o'clock Eastern. You're going to be shocked to find out on Sunday. Okay, on Monday, after the damage report, I guess you should watch that. Dr. Rashad Rishi, Indisputable. That's at 2:15 p.m. Eastern on Mondays on Twitch. We'll see you there. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, Mike, and Jessica Vicari. Jessica just joined Young Turks by hitting the join button below on YouTube. She a bit of an American hero? Yes. Welcome, Jessica. All right, John, you're up.
Okay. We've got a bit of news you're going to want to keep on your radar at the beginning of next week. I know that Representative Matt Gaetz is going to be watching it, and that is that Joel Greenberg, one of his best buddies, is set to plead guilty on Monday to federal charges as part of a plea deal with the feds. Now, Greenberg, who had previously pleaded not guilty, currently faces 33 counts amid a slew of crimes. Since his initial arrest last June, the indictment has expanded from stalking and identity theft to include charges of stealing from the tax office he once led in Florida and sex trafficking a minor. A 17-year-old girl who Greenberg claimed in a confession letter had been paid to have sex with him and a number of his associates, including Gaetz. Now, in terms of what exactly is going to happen next week, we don't have very specific details. The Thursday court filing doesn't provide details of exactly which charges he's going to plead guilty to or the conditions of his agreement with the U.S. Attorney's Office. But two sources familiar with the investigation have said Greenberg will likely not be able to shake off the sex trafficking charge. A conviction for sex trafficking a minor carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years in prison. But the initial reporting said that he would likely be pleading guilty to 6 of the 33. Now, if he were doing that and believing that that would be sufficient as part of the deal, getting so many of them knocked away implies a close working relationship with the investigators and likely the possibility that he had valuable information to provide in exchange for getting rid of a couple of dozen other charges. So again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen to Greenberg, let alone what this might mean for Representative Matt Gaetz, but it's probably not good news from the congressman's point of view.
Now, John just gave you the facts in a newsman-like way. I will summarize this way. Na 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 na. Okay, so this guy strikes a plea deal. Remember, Matt Gaetz and him were on the record about 1 billion% back and forth. Oh yeah, you want to get hookers? That's not an exact quote, but basically, and it's not my words, it's their words. Again, I'm paraphrasing though. And then they would talk about the specific girls. They would do stupid things like write in, what's the reason for paying them tuition? When you're trying to get young girls and you're paying for young girls, don't write it's for tuition. But it's worse, Matt Gaetz actually wrote the name of the girl on the Venmo account. It just doesn't get any dumber. It looks like Greenberg's got 1,000 pieces of documents that he could hand over to prosecutors. His lawyer indicated that he already did. And so now, usually rich white men get away with everything in this country, if we're keeping it real. And Republicans, if they're right wingers, they're like almost above the law. But this is really bad, and he's not named Donald Trump. So I'm so curious, because if Matt Gaetz doesn't at least have to resign, I mean, him going to prison, it seems impossible. A right-wing white man going to prison in this country that's wealthy and already powerful seems literally impossible, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll say, okay, how about just leaving office? Is that possible? And if he doesn't, that means, no, that's it. Right-wing, white men, unfortunately in this country, or maybe fortunately for them, totally above the law. They could do anything, including having sex with underage girls and trafficking them and still get away with it. But my guess is he'll at least have to resign. But I'm not positive, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the first time in his life that he's ever faced any sort of accountability whatsoever. I mean, his father is super rich, so there's that. But also, I just want to comment on this story. So it's both illuminating and perplexing at the same time. It's illuminating because now we kind of understand why he was the one member of Congress to vote against a sex trafficking bill just a couple of years ago. So now it all makes a little bit more sense. But it's confusing because he's currently going on an America First tour with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a former QAnon member, perhaps a current QAnon member. And aren't they supposed to be against the sex traffickers? Mm-hmm. I'm confused by this. Yeah. I feel like she should be taking a stand here. She should be outraged. She should be calling him out. But when it's their own team, crickets.
Yeah, Mike, it almost sounds like you're saying that they don't actually care about any of the things that they claim to care about. That they're actually don't think that the immigrant that crossed the border with $0 in his pocket actually secretly controls the entire United States government and sets the rules. That they just use them as a target to demagogue. Like they don't actually think top politicians in this country run child sex trafficking rings. And they just say that about Democrats to destroy their brand and to win politically, and to use child molestation as a deeply callous, immoral political football. It almost sounds like that's what you're saying, and like what they seem to be doing with their actions. But I'm sure Marjorie Taylor Greene, during the breaks of their joint tour, is chiding Matt Gaetz very religiously. Matt, you have been a bad boy. I'm sure she says all the time. She probably yells into his mailbox, but we just don't see it. Outwardly, she seems to be supporting the person charged with the most child sex trafficking allegations in all of Congress, and the guy who's number 2, Jim Jordan, who's not charged with doing it himself, but protecting a notorious child molester who was his friend when he was a wrestling coach. So 2 for 2, let alone, of course, the big guy. Donald Trump, who was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, is on the record as saying that Jeffrey Epstein liked women as much as I do, but he likes them really young. That means that Trump knew. Trump knew that Jeffrey Epstein was having sex with underage girls and thought it was a joke, thought it was funny. Well, and then when Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested, he wished her well twice, even though she's literally the most notorious child sex trafficker in the country. She was Jeffrey Epstein's partner. And all of that overwhelming information about actual child molesters in the Republican Party, let alone the former Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, who turned out to be an actual child molester himself, and etc. And they're like, yeah, the Democrats did it. QAnon and every right wingers, you're all a joke. All you don't care about child molestation. You don't care about that at all. The fact that you use it as a political prop makes you a disgusting person. Disgusting. You're anyway. You know,
it's just simple-minded. It is setting up a dichotomy where you don't ever have to think critically about any particular Democrat, whether there might be value to any of their proposals, or maybe we disagree, but they're still honorable gentlemen or whatever. No, they rape and eat children. So that I've cleansed you. You never have to think critically about them. And the thing about Matt Gaetz, it's not just that let's say she was just being silent about Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan and Donald Trump. That would be cowardly enough. But she's going on a tour with him. She is basically the only Republican that's standing by him, it's such a more active thing to do that it almost implies to me that this is also about sending a message to her followers that, like, I'm gonna reassure you, in case you ever have an uncomfortable thought, like 1 ounce of cognitive dissonance about the fact that there might be pedophiles in our own party. No, you know that you trust me. I'm vouching for him. The Democrats are all Satanists who eat baby faces, and the Republicans, no matter how bad it may sound, we'll put it under the umbrella of fake news. I'll stand by them, so you know that they're good. It's this perfect black and white dichotomy, and she, when put to the test, is always going to buttress that.
Look, guys, 2 things about this. Number one, I talk about a lot more in my theoretically upcoming book. So you can get it at justiceiscomingbook.com. Justiceiscomingbook.com. And what is the abortion issue? It's about Democrats killing babies. So QAnon's been around for a long, long time. It's a giant part of the Republican Party. And they've always, so while the Democrats keep beseeching the Republicans, our beloved Republican colleagues, Nancy Pelosi recently said she just wants the Republican Party to be stronger. And Joe Biden's constantly rooting for the Republican Party. The Republicans have been saying that Democrats are child killers for as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
Okay, and so this is nothing new. And so the second point is, but if they don't actually mean it, which is obvious they don't, based on all the evidence we just gave you, and they don't even care about child molestation when it actually happens, what do they care about? You know what unites the right-wing voters? Fear and hatred.
Yeah.
So black people, brown people, immigrants, etc. They're coming for my money, they're coming for my house, they're coming for my daughter, they're coming for my wife. Always worried about their wife. I don't know what it is, right? I need a big gun because I'm insecure, etc. Fear, hatred. Let's be honest. That's what unites them.
Yeah.
The only thing that unites them.
Yeah. Also, and you'll have to do the research yourself, both Gaetz and Green have been known to party. I'll just say that unites them as well. But anyway, let's get into our last story because we have less than 5 minutes at this point. It would seem like it would be easy to set up some sort of government investigation into what happened when the government itself was attacked on the 6th. But the negotiations to set that up have been fraught. Republicans have raised any number of different ridiculous roadblocks. That said, we do apparently have some sort of deal. Under the terms of the agreement that's been reached, negotiated by Representatives Benny Thompson and John Katko, Congress is gonna form a 10-person commission with 5 members appointed each by the Democrats and the Republicans. The commissioners must have, quote, significant expertise in the areas of law enforcement, civil rights, civil liberties, privacy, intelligence, and cybersecurity, and cannot currently hold public office. The panel would be charged with investigating the circumstances of the attack as well as the influencing factors that may have provoked it. And subpoenas are gonna have to receive approval from both the chair and the vice chair. The commission is gonna issue a final report by the end of the year, which is just enough time for 80% of the population to forget that it happened and the remaining 20% Republicans to still believe that Antifa did it. But that said, we are going to have a commission. They're going to look into and then eventually put out a report on who actually organized it, the chatter online that was going on around it, what planning there might have been for the attack. Hopefully a bit more firm information about what exact messaging was going on between the mayor, the president, the National Guard during the day and all of that, although you are going to have to wait to actually get that information.
Yeah, so I'm really mixed on this. So first of all, they're spending $1.9 billion on it. Seems like a lot of money for a commission. I get that a lot of it's gonna go to the Capitol Hill Police. Some of it should go to the Capitol Hill Police, but not exactly defund the police when you give them extra couple of $1 billion. And so some of it's going to great stuff like body cams and mental health assistance, et cetera. But there's apparently going to be a retractable fence system. So whenever there's an intruder named a citizen, they're going to presumably put up a giant fence around the Capitol. So yes, the rioters, right-wing rioters, ruined it for everybody. Yes, it is their fault. But I don't want the Capitol to be in permanent lockdown, because who are they going to lock out first? Progressive protesters, you know that. When the right wing came in with violence, the cops let them. Cops got beat into the ground. Look, people always say like, "Oh, poor cops," they, et cetera. And yeah, of course, and we've talked about it, and they were brutally assaulted by the right wing rioters. Well, I'm going to say something controversial. Why did they shoot them? They shot one of them finally when they were about to break into the most inner chamber of Congress, where they might actually murder the Congress people, right? But if that was black protesters, it would have been a slaughter. They would have been massacred. Everybody knows that. Oh my God, imagine if it was Muslim protesters. I don't know if any of them would have walked out alive. They beat the living crap out of cops, like hundreds of cops. Cops barely, other than one instance, didn't shoot back. I've never seen anything like that. So is this commission going to investigate that? Why didn't cops, who always shoot first, ask questions later? Why was this the one time, the time that we most needed them to do security, the one time that they didn't shoot immediately? I just don't get it. I don't want them shooting immediately, but there was many moments there where you would have said, that's a justifiable shooting. Like when one of the officers is being dragged down the steps of the Capitol and tased with his own taser. My God, if black people were doing that, they would have brought in a Gatling gun and mowed down everybody, right? But they just let them walk. So, but it's the reason, but it's split 50-50. It's half Republicans on this commission, half Democrats. They're never going to investigate that. I'd be shocked if they investigated. Why didn't the cops shoot? Why were they given orders? If they're right wingers, just get your ass handed to you. Doesn't matter if you die. If they're right wingers, bow down before them. I mean, there was recently the acting Secretary of Defense said on the record, Trump said to him on January 3rd, make sure the National Guard protects the protesters, okay? And so now, remember when the protesters then threatened to execute members of Congress, Trump did not order the National Guard to go in. The National Guard was to protect the vigilantes trying to do the coup. It was not to protect the Congress people that they were trying to do the coup against, and his own vice president. So, and the last thing is, I'm enormously skeptical of any BS political commission. So they're going to find what they're going to investigate the right wing groups. They're going to find out who actually plots against America all the time, and they're going to go arrest them. They'll probably do a couple that were at the event, right? That were actually on there at the Capitol on January 6th. Sure, they'll follow up on that, okay? But those groups overall, nah, they're right wing. I'd be shocked if there were consequences. Mike.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of red flags, and I feel like only nothing but negative things can come of this, right? Mondaire Jones is one of the few representatives actually kind of sounding the alarm, saying, is it really the best idea to just give Capitol Police more money? Because let's remember, Capitol Police officers were taking selfies with some of the rioters. So you're giving money to people who may have been complicit in a way. And so whenever I see things like this, I just think, okay, how are Democrats and Republicans going to team up to crack down on civil liberties? I mean, every single person who is an adult should know about the Patriot Act and how 9/11 was used as a justification to further crack down on civil liberties. And so what I could anticipate with the big fence that you're referring to, Cenk, is that this is going to be a situation where, perhaps they'll use it against right-wingers if they choose to storm the Capitol again, but disproportionately, this will be used against the left every single time. So if we want to use some sort of a march on, or do a march on Washington for Medicare for all, well, they're going to bring this out. So I don't trust it, and I'm skeptical, and I don't think it's like, what are they using the $1.9 billion for? Like, how is this going to lead to any accountability? I think the answer is that it's not. So I just fear it more than anything else.
Yeah. Look, and finally, Mike brings up an excellent point, which is the 9/11 Commission. the parts that actually told us Saudi Arabia did it were redacted.
Yep.
And we've never found out the government of Saudi Arabia's actual role in attacking us. They're the people who actually attacked us on 9/11. We did a whole giant commission and 2 wars, and we never held accountable the people who actually did it, right? Instead, that commission was used to take away our rights. So you'll excuse me if I'm a little skeptical about a new commission. Yes, for a good purpose, seemingly, but usually these commissions wind up screwing over the average American citizen and the left wing way more than anyone else, even if Democrats are in charge.
Yeah.
We're
unfortunately out of time.
Yeah, yes we are. All right, everybody check out Mike Figueredo on the Humanist Report, or his new name, Mike from the Humanist Report on the Humanist Report. Okay, so thank you for joining us, Mike. I appreciate it. Everybody, of course, check out Damage Report. John's show is fantastic. It's obviously part of the TYT network. And then when we come back, more strong online progressives. Brian Tyler Cohen. And Francesca. A wonderful power panel coming up. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.